Hey dudes, it's Llarold. Some of Blizzard's developers recently had a panel at PAX in which they talked about the past, present, and future of WoW with a specific focus on the world building aspect. They also dropped some very small teasers for future content, which was cool. One of the big things that they kept emphasizing throughout that talk, and really they've emphasized throughout the past several years, is that they're actively listening to player feedback. I also have spent the past few days playing around on the patch 11.1.7 PTR, playing with Horrific Visions, and checking out kind of just all of the new stuff that is going on there, including the new built-in ability highlights and the one-button rotation assistant. So with all of that in mind, I want to give some feedback about the state of the game, and that's really what this video is. It's a breakdown of some of the good stuff that's new or coming soon, and some of the feedback that I have on things that I think aren't quite 100% right. And with that being said, let's just get into it. Let's start with Horrific Visions. These are a piece of old BFA content that have been repurposed into a temporary event in the War Within, and they're actually coming out next week. They're not waiting for patch 11.1.7. I just tried to test them early in the 1.5 PTR and wasn't able to, and I just now got to it. So I was unsure about the release cadence of content in patch 11.1.5 with the patch dropping over a month ago at this point, and then Horrific Visions being like 5 weeks in, and Dastardly Duos being several weeks after that. It's weird, right, to drop a patch and then time delay all of the other stuff that comes in the patch. But it does kind of create a sense that there's new stuff to check back in, and see every few weeks, and it feels like less of an overload. You know, if you log in on patch day and there's 15 new things to do, something's gonna get left behind. Even if you're not overwhelmed, even if it's not too much for you, and for most people it probably will be, even if it's not somehow, something's gonna get skipped. It's the same reason I don't go to the grocery store on the first of the month and buy 31 days of food all at once. You kinda wanna stagger some things out. And now that I've had a chance to experience this in this patch after having done, I guess, 20 years of content releases the other way, where the patch lands and everything that's in it is here now, I actually don't think this is bad. I was more excited about Horrific Visions than anything else in the patch, so I didn't love the aspect of, waiting a month for it, but now that I have waited a month, I'm actually not mad about it. I think it's all right. This really does feel like a new era of WoW with constant stuff to do, and it really is a big point of emphasis in this new era that all of the newly added content is optional. I think looking back at BFA, since this is old BFA content, I think that's a good thing to do, to kind of see where we've come from to where we've gotten to. And the biggest mistake of that BFA, Shadowlands, and even Legion era to some extent is that many of the new exciting pieces of content like World Quests or Island Expeditions, Horrific Visions, and Torghast were optional in the same way that breathing is optional. You don't have to do it, but you really should. Players challenged the developers on this at the time. I specifically remember interviews in which people said, I have to do this content, and Blizzard's response officially was, you don't have to run Torghast or Island Expeditions or Horrific Visions. I guess that's true. You don't have to play the game, but I choose to, and choosing to play the game while not doing content that gives you 30% of your player power is stupid. And it was entirely the fault of a design that forced you to do that specific content in order to unlock all of that player power. And what we're seeing is continued attempts to steer away from that design, for the most part. And I think that's great. Horrific Visions now will grant a bunch of Helm enchants based on those BFA corruption bonuses that give you big statter damage procs. That might seem mandatory, right? It is a lot of player power, but the bonus is temporary. It only lasts through the rest of the season. So if you're done with Season 2 from a competitive sense, you did all the dungeons you want to do, all the raiding you wanted to do, you're not forced to come back and do this at all. If you never touch Horrific Visions in Season 2, you will not be behind at the start of Season 3. On the other hand, if you are wanting to push Mythic Plus, try and get a title, something like that, or re-clear bosses and farm raids faster and get 100 percentile parses or whatever, then Horrific Visions are perfect. It's something to do that's new and, old and different, and I actually think they are really fun. In terms of the time I've spent testing them, they seem like they are aimed at a much lower level of difficulty than they were back in BFA, which is a good call because I feel like they were overtuned back then. I did my 5 mask runs, I did everything that involved Horrific Visions, I got all my feats of strength, and I have to say I really like them a lot more now than I did then. So I'm glad they're coming back even if it's just a temporary event. Now on that note, PTR testing for patch 11.1.7 content is just starting to get underway, So there's not a crazy amount of stuff to talk about in that patch, but there are a couple of features I really want to go in on. One new feature that really ties into the subject of world building and is like kind of a great tie-in with that Pax Panel is the new lore walking quest lines. These are essentially playable storytime quests with lore walker Cho, who is one of my favorite NPCs ever. You can find him in Dornegal, and you go up to him, and you'll have a choice of 3 stories at the moment. They are the story of Xalatath, the Lich King, and the Ethereals. And they kind of walk you through playing with some old quest lines, but also kind of, I think, getting to experience some brand new quest lines. And they really teach you a lot of the old story. You know, I think one of my biggest criticisms of WoW over the years has been the way that the team has treated a lot of the content kind of as disposable. You go to a zone a few times, you go do a cool raid a few times. I was talking about this with Sunset, my channel manager, a whole bunch recently. Like, Castle Nathria was an amazing raid zone. I don't want to go back and do Castle Nathria as a raid again right now, but the fact that that building exists and we never go there or look at all of that beautiful artwork seems like a real waste. So what I think they've done with this lore walking stuff is they've found a really smart way to repurpose some of that beautiful old content, the fun old quest lines, the cool looking architecture, and they've made something new out of it while also really enhancing the world building and storytelling. This is really good for people who are interested in the lore or some of the more aesthetic aspects of the game, and it's done in a really cute way, I think, where you sit down on a bench with Cho and he actually starts talking with you, and then the world around you kind of turns into a quest line and you start playing around. You're basically doing the Shadow Priest artifact weapon quest line from Legion if you're doing the Xalatath storyline. But then you can click a button to like ask Cho what happened next in the story, and you and he will pop up on your little bench where you're talking to each other, kind of just like pop up in the middle of the quest line. You know, it's like like I said, it's very cute. I think the storytelling aspect is done really well here. Cho also just kind of breaks into the story from time to time to narrate or to skip over sections, and I just really liked it a lot. I think that this kind of thing, when Blizzard is being like kind of cute and lighthearted, at times I think is really when they're at their best when it comes to storytelling. You also get a toy from each storyline, and I like that. They all seem pretty cool. There were also some funny bits along the way through the Xalatath questline where I got artifact power as a quest reward, which is just like, that was very funny to me. Now, in terms of other stuff in the patch, there are 2 new versions of a rotation assistant that are being built into the game. The first is an effect that will just make the skills on your action bar kind of light up to indicate what spell you should hit next in order to perform an optimal-ish rotation. It's not perfect, right? But it's close enough for like world quests and delves, and that's kind of what it's aimed at. You know, you can use it for like low-level mythic, I mean, you can use it for literally anything if you want, but it is really aimed more at people who are not the highest-end blasters. They want a bit of help. I think that's good. There are lots of add-ons like Heck Healy Rotation Assist, which is kind of what this is emulating. And rather than, you know, you're a new player, you have to go download this add-on, now it's just kind of built into the game's core functionality. This is something that Blizzard has done for many years, and I think it's a smart move to do it here again. The other rotation assistant is a 1-button rotation helper, and it is a lot more hand-holdy. It adds a 0.3 second penalty onto your GCD in exchange for using it, but then you're able to just kind of press one button all the time and sort of do a generically good rotation. Is it good for doing max DPS? Of course not. It's not going to use your offensive cooldowns for you, it's not going to use defensive skills, it's not going to heal you, it's not going to heal other players, it's not going to be useful for tanking or healing at all, so I really don't think it's going to be useful for anyone except for players who are running trivial or non-competitive content like leveling a class or doing world quests or maybe doing normal dungeons, right? And that's totally fine. That's really all that this is aimed at. It is probably an upgrade for the majority of players in most LFR groups, if we're being real, but even for like the most basic time-walking dungeon, I think it's probably not going to be that useful of a tool for any player who has any real level of experience with the game. It's pretty much just there to help new players, or maybe like people who have some sort of disability. It's not something I'm ever going to use, and that's totally fine, it's just not a feature that's for me. Now, I've seen some content creators pretend to be upset about it. WoW is over, the usual stuff, the same thing I've been hearing for 18 years now. I think that's embarrassing, right? It's basically just an accessibility feature. No one got mad when they added colorblind mode to the game, right? Why would they be upset about 1-button rotation assist? If people are playing WoW and they're happy, then I'm happy too. I think this is a good feature. I think it's going to wind up being sort of like follower dungeons, where it's something that most people never even think about, but for the people who it is intended for, they're very happy with it, and nothing in the game is really ever broken by it. It might even be like a fun challenge to try and see if you can do the Mage Tower only using the one button rotation thing. Like, I could definitely see making a video out of that just as kind of a fun challenge for myself, right? Then there's another feature in patch 11.1.7, basically the only other feature that's in the patch thus far, and this is kind of a disappointment to me given everything else that's been built up so far in this video. It's a new upgradable piece of gear that will be good throughout the rest of Season 2 and into Season 3. It's a belt, it has primary stats, and then a customizable proc, and it grants damage or healing procs or stat procs. It's super basic and pretty boring. So it's supposed to scale up to item level 800 or so, and people are not thrilled that they're continuing this Circe's Signet design into another patch cycle, including me. I am also not thrilled. On the one hand, it is good to get a gear upgrade for very little work. All you have to do is run a few delves and then you get a nice belt. It adds a bunch of damage. That's cool. On the other hand, this means that for hardcore players like myself, I now have an extra chore that I have to do at least 6 times if I want to play any non-tank alts, and that's 7 or more. And also when belts drop off of bosses early on in the next tier or in the next season of Mythic Plus, they're gonna be, everybody's gonna be mad, right? And they should be, because Blizzard invalidated that gear slot with a Season 2 delve item. I think the idea of a belt that's just like a regular, normal belt with stats and a special delve-only proc that maybe even goes up to the max item level for Season 2 as something that you could acquire this season, and it could stay useful into Season 3 of delves because of a delve-only proc, again, I think that would be cool. Rewards from a type of content that are then useful for people who like that content is a good idea. Being told as a hardcore raider whose main emphasis is hardcore raiding, not delving, that the best way to be a better hardcore raider is to do delves is kind of recreating the same problems that we had in BFA and Shadowlands. It's not like delves are hard, right? They're not forcing me to hit 3k PvP rating. It could definitely be worse. But it could also be better. I would probably not ever set foot in delves if this belt didn't exist, but I will because of it, and the moment the belt is done, I'm gonna be done with delves as well. It feels like a holdover from that old design philosophy that kind of made people unhappy. It made them feel like their time wasn't totally being respected, and I think they're right to feel that way. The main takeaway here is that I'm not angry, right? I'm not mad, don't put it in the newspaper that I got mad. It just feels like an obvious mistake, but not an unforgivable one, just kind of an annoyance. I know I'm not the only person giving this feedback, so I do hope they hear us on this one in particular, but I would imagine the design is probably already done for this belt. If they quit replicating this system in future expansions, I think I would actually prefer that. I like the idea of an item that could be useful for the rest of the season, maybe not so much going into the next one. And then we have the turbo boost. Now, as of the time of recording, this is landing tomorrow, but by the time this video is out, it'll probably be, today. And the turbo boost is going to remove the cap on all types of crests, which is good. It's going to make it so that you can transfer Valor Stones back and forth between characters, although that probably won't matter all that much. And it's going to add in vendors where you can directly buy pieces of raid gear or Mythic Plus gear. This is good in theory. I think the limitation of killing raid bosses on Mythic difficulty in order to buy Mythic versions of items doesn't really make sense, especially given that new belt that's going to come from the easiest in-game content that we have in WoW and is going to last well into Season 3. The reality is that that belt is going to be longer lived than any of the Mythic Raid or Mythic Plus trinkets that come from the turbo boost. So that really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't lose anything because people can buy House of Cards on their alts, right? Like, I don't care about that. I appreciate that there needs to be some level of friction in acquiring gear upgrades early on in a WoW season. I think that's totally fine. But we're past that point now. The Hall of Fame is closed. The race is over. And so I think that letting people have pretty much easy access to gear that they can upgrade all the way up to Myth Track if they bother to farm the Mythic Crests for it, that seems fine. I also think that clearing 10s and 12s, whatever number you want to settle on, but some level of Mythic Plus at this point in the season should just give Myth Track gear. There's really no reason to make gear less accessible once the race to World First, the Hall of Fame of the raid tier, whatever limitation you want to go off of. Once that's done, I just don't see a point in making item level be some heavily limited thing. It's not like it's the limiting factor for Mythic Plus pushing, and it's not like 10s and 12s are trivially easy. They're not hard, but it's not like you just log in and get free gear like the free belt that comes from Delves. I know some people will disagree, and I'm sorry, but I just think that they're wrong, and I even think that that's kind of dumb. Crafted gear already exists and is super easy to get. Certainly it's easier to get than completing a 12, and that gives you control over both the item slot and the itemization. So being able to just directly farm Mythtrack gear by running Mythic Plus isn't some game-ruining thing. It's basically just a way to streamline the gearing process once gear is no longer relevant to early progression rating. With crest requirements going way up, it's going to take over 100 timed plus 10 runs to fully upgrade a character's gear, by the way. Giving Mythic Plus players direct access to Mythtrack gear without the randomness and time gating of the weekly cache seems like an obvious crowd-pleasing design choice to me, and ultimately isn't the goal of playing World of Warcraft for everyone to have fun getting more gear? I think so. What I know is that the easier it is to gear up characters, the more time I spend playing WoW, because I have an easier time finishing my main and moving on to my alts. I feel like my time is being well spent. You know, I'm being rewarded for spending time in the game. When gearing is slower, I work on my main, I usually ignore my alts, and then I move on to play Path of Exile. That is the reason why we made our second YouTube channel in the first place, Path of Evening. Here's a plug, by the way. I was frustrated by how slow gearing up alts was in late Dragonflight, and that led to us making that YouTube channel, which we've had a lot of fun doing. And PoE is a game that I feel like rewards your time a lot more directly than WoW does at the current moment. This isn't a perfect apples to apples comparison. They're different genres, they're different games. But certainly I would like to see gear acquisition, at least once the season is more than halfway over, sped up quite a bit. You know, I think getting gear is fun, and I think getting gear being something that's super duper slow like it is right now is a lot less fun. Alright, now I'll finish up by just covering some of the biggest pieces of information from that PAX panel. It's about an hour long, it's worth watching if you enjoy WoW and you want to know about some of the behind the scenes world building design decisions. The biggest takeaways for me are that the team's really excited about player housing, which obviously people have wanted that for as long as I can possibly remember about this game. And also that they're going to continue steadily giving us new stuff to do in WoW. This release cadence of the patch drops, then Horrific Visions drop, then Dastardly Duos drops a little while after that. Legion Remix is coming, a new mystery game mode's coming after that. Like, all of this steady release cadence where there's something to do every few weeks, that's not going to change. And I'm glad, because that really does make the game seem fresh. Being able to do Legion Mythic Plus while doing like 300 million DPS due to the insane remix scaling should be pretty fun. It sounds cool, and getting to revisit the Legion artifact is going to be really fun. I'm not sure how it's going to work on specs like Brewmaster Monk and Prot Pally, where the weapon skill from the artifact is now just a baseline talent and has been for a lot of years, but I guess we'll find out. There's also a new game mode. Again, it's supposed to be some sort of horror game mode, and they gave 0 other details, so, you know, I just look forward to hearing about that whenever they decide to let us know more. I do hope it's not a PvP exclusive game mode, because I really liked some of the gameplay aspects of Plunderstorm, but it was a battle royale, so PvP only, and PvP in WoW has just never really been my thing. Alright, let's wrap things up. There's a lot to do in WoW right now. I'm going to be spending a bunch of time running Mythic Plus over the coming weeks, and farming tons of crests. I am really looking forward to Horrific Visions next week, though. That's definitely something I'm going to be spending a ton of time playing around with across all of my alts, because I think they're pretty fun, and they seem like they could be pretty rewarding. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, and if you want to support us even further, consider becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching. Bye.